Can't hear you, Ethan.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Very good. Okay, cool. So let me get a look at everyone here and see if our guest for today has arrived. The SFPTG is joining. That sounds fun. How you doing over there, Carl? Your hair is looking especially electrified today. You're going for it. Okay, awesome. All right. Well, I see that our guest for today has arrived. So let me find him. There he is. Let's uh, let's see here. Spotlight Danny, and I'll spotlight myself. And let me see. Can you unmute yourself, Danny? Yeah, you're almost there.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Good job. Cool. Welcome, man.
Howdy.
How's it going? So,
Oh, a little hectic, but
a
I'm
little
here.
hectic day. Okay. Well, appreciate you joining us. Appreciate you being here. So I'll introduce you, and then we'll sort of jump in. And Danny's kind of a friend of mine, a longtime friend of mine from back in high school. His brother and I were in a band, um, and so we've known each other a long time. And I thought he would actually make a good guest for us this week because he works with guitars. And I think we might have some interesting questions to ask him and see what's going on. But he's totally unfamiliar with what we do here, so we'll have to kind of fill him in as we go, and we'll get started. So I'm going to give a little intro, Danny. So
Cool.
there's a handful of people that watch on. There's like a YouTube, Facebook stream as well, and then we just have this small group. We usually get about 50 to 100 here on Zoom. So I'll give a little intro, and then I'll
Trying to make me nervous.
yeah, don't be nervous, Danny. Then I'll give a little intro to you. I'll make sure you sound way better than you really are, so that you have to live up to some unrealistic expectations, and then and then we'll get started. Okay, so welcome everyone to Piano Tech Radio Hour. This is being brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online educational resource that offers you cutting edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You could find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. And again, we're organizing a convention for September. We're excited about. You might have seen in recent emails that you can pre-register for that. So make sure you do. You don't have any commitment there. You just have to click a link, but that shows us that you're interested in attending, and we'll make sure and send you the best discount when the tickets become available. And if you think you'll be attending, make sure and reserve the dates. That's September 2nd, 10th, and the 17th. In terms of the days, we'll be talking about piano tech work. Okay, so our guest today's name is Danny Kaintop, and I'm going to give a little bio for him. And I told him, we're just going to have fun here today. He doesn't have to give any sort of presentation or anything. So we'll sort of go with where the conversation runs, and I'll let you know about Danny. So Danny studied product design at Columbia College in Chicago, where he focused on guitars. And after that, he met and apprenticed with a violin maker named Michael Darnton and joined a restoration team at Darnton and Hirsch Fine Violins, Chicago. He became greater acquainted with the ancestry of string instruments over, I believe, a 3-year period, is what I got from your bio, practicing restoration techniques on many 6 years. Is that right? Okay. So 6 years practicing restoration techniques on many museum quality instruments. And his mentor, Michael's work solely encompassed hand tools and traditions based upon methods from the 17th century. And so even though Danny makes guitars, this is the foundation of his practice of guitar making. And I'll do some share screens later, and you could get a sense of the type of instruments that Danny makes, but they're just beautiful, incredible instruments that he builds, and also sound quite nice as well. And I'll say, although Danny has been acquainted with a lot of power tools over the years, after studying with Michael and sort of learning efficient use of hand tools, he says that sometimes it's almost faster to do things by hand. And that's interesting too, just for us piano technicians, what tools we use. I know a lot of piano techs, need to use hand tools in various situations. So anyways, that's Danny. That's my bio. How did that bio go? Did I give a good? Did I give a
Yeah,
good bio?
I think I have a lot to add to that.
Yeah, go ahead. Add away.
So prior to going to product design school, I studied at SUNY Purchase guitar
Right.
performance, and that I studied classical guitar for a long time, since I was a teenager, and in terms of what I now, that along with the product design has really shaped how I view what I do, because in the classical guitar world, you see these instruments with like unlimited potential. And I was fixated on the archtop guitar, but I was always, in my mind, trying to connect the two and found that there wasn't really a connection. And then I found that connection when I was studying the violin restoration work with the carved instruments. And that kind of fueled my archtop design. And then going to school for design work, I did learn a ton about technology and what I can do with the computer. And so now I'm in this perfect world of combining the two, because there's certainly a lot of things I can do that in terms of tool design that I've implemented through use of computer design. And the doing things by hand is a fun thing, that the idea being that the next time you do something, to try to do it faster, like that mind game of and that's something that Michael did. He's like, every time you do something, try to do it better, but also a little bit faster than the previous time you did it.
Cool.
I can go on and on and on. So,
No, that sounds sufficient. Yeah, I didn't add the part about your study of guitar, but I think that is very relevant to add to the conversation. So you've been doing this now for how many years? Have you been sort of your own independent archtop guitar maker?
I got laid off in 2008, 2009 from Darn and Hirsch because of the market collapse. Our shop basically facilitated the sales of these fine instruments, and when they didn't have sales, they had to let the restoration team go, and that was like a blessing for me. When I first got into the violin world, I was afraid that it was going to take away from my guitar making direction, and thank God it just fueled it. And so being laid off was kind of a blessing, because I took everything I learned with Michael and put every single unemployment check into starting a new business. But I made my first guitar with my dad when I was 17. So I've been doing it for a little over 20 years, but on record since 2009.
Was that the first instrument that you sold in 2009? Guitar?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I think it was.
Approximately.
Yeah. I think maybe I was on like I've got maybe 10 guitars beneath that are numbered, but probably not worth, they're sitting under a bed somewhere or in an ash pile.
All right. Let me make sure I fix my audio a little bit. I know there's a little bit of echo in this room, so I just moved my mic closer. Somebody tipped me off there. Are you getting my audio okay, Danny?
Yeah, coming in great.
Cool. Yeah, so I thought it'd just be interesting to have this conversation like with someone who works in guitars, because in some senses we're similar. You know, we have piano makers, piano repair people. We work with wood, we work with metal, we work with mechanical parts. We probably have to deal with humidity fluctuations and, you know, think about the considerations of wood kind of stretching and aging, drying out, humidity, and all this kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of questions for you guys.
Yeah, well, why don't you
Like
ask a question that you might have for us? That could be a fun way to start the conversation.
just
And I
just that
definitely I want yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say just that list of runoff things that you mentioned. The first thing I think of is like how do you adjust what you do for a player. So restoration work or making a piano, how much of that is what I do is very much tailored to a specific person, from the voice of the instrument to the setup. And the setup, I mean, I think is such an important thing that often gets overlooked. And when you understand setup, you can make, a not so great guitar sound really great. And is that
And
something?
so
Is there like
ex-
a go for it?
so yeah, tell us what setup means in terms of a guitar. So I'm assuming some adjustments that you make, and there's various parameters. What are the adjustments that make, and how does that change the player's experience with the instrument? And then I'll tell you what the analog is, because I'm
Well,
pretty
for
sure there is. Yeah.
for me, if it depends how broad you think of the word setup, right? I mean, so when I'm working for somebody, um, all of this stuff from the communication and getting somebody's energy, knowing their playing style, what the overall purpose of the instrument, is going to be. Um, like everything is important, from the wood you choose to how that flavors the sound, the neck angle, the bridge projection, neck relief, and I feel like it's a little bit minimal to just say setup is just string height, because when you're doing something so specific for one person, it starts at zero.
Right.
And that's kind of the issue that the guitar world faces. I'm getting off topic here, but the guitar has always been a mass-produced uh, thing, and now we're beginning to see all these makers, and like how I want to make the Archtop sound more like a classical instrument, where a player picks up an instrument and plays it first and listens to it with their eyes closed, and then when they're done playing with it, they look at it. And up till now, everybody's just shopping it for guitars based on how glossy it is and how beautiful it looks. And I think that's kind of backwards. So what I'm doing is very, very specific. And in the violin world, everything, no matter how small it is, it contributes to the whole.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go back to the setup idea, how big the guitar is, your choice of different tone woods, obviously, whether you want to do something like rosewood or ebony can flavor the sound, maple or mahogany, sound holes. There's a lot of variances that you can do to push the guitar in one direction or another. And I find that the communication between myself and my customer or my client is so important. And for reasons that I can't explain, it's that communication that allows me to do things that I wouldn't do by myself. Sometimes I'm led down certain wormholes, which I'm grateful for, and sometimes not so much. But I feel like in the end, it's always successful, because the more communication from that client is seen when the guitar is done. And in a way, the instrument isn't really finished when it leaves my shop. It's, the journey continues. But going back to setup, the end thing is, once you have the system done, there are those little tweaks and adjustments you can do. Obviously, we're working with organic matter that change. So when you apply tension, things change. So it's important to have, things built into your system that you can manipulate for, the end user.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about what I think the analog is of the setup that you talked about. And then actually, I'd love to just jump to your website to show people, kind of give them at least a better experience of what you do. I think it'd be interesting to sort of, even though you said, you know, touching and playing the guitars is the best, kind of take a look at them because they're also beautiful, and just get a sense of, you know, who is Danny and what's his business like. But it sounds very similar, and what happens, it seems, in the piano industry is similar to what's going on with you in your industry. Is this, you know, being able to communicate with the client is of utmost importance for those who want to be at the high end of what they do. And sometimes that can be difficult, you know, because we're, you know, at least for piano technicians, a lot of us are kind of like very technical, you know, gosh, maybe we're even like on the autistic spectrum, you know, not like really great at communication naturally with other people. And then but we're good at communicating with each other, using technical terminology, and there can be a lot of snags, you know, about a client saying what they want or what a problem is, and then we have to do the work of translating, well, what do they really mean in our language, you know? But beyond that, basically the analog of what you're talking about with setup, I think, is regulation, and potentially voicing of a piano. So, you know, just like, you know, the string height is going to affect how people feel the playing of the guitar. On a piano, we can adjust the action so that it's more even, from note to note. We can even go deeper and adjust sort of the leverage that people get out of a particular key. And across the keyboard, you know, you can change the weights and the angles within the piano action, to make it more to someone's liking. And there's a lot of, you know, fine elements that you could tweak. And much like what you said about setup, I saw you kind of talking about sort of the basic thing of maybe string height, and then saying, well, it can almost go to the whole design of the guitar, like setting it up for the individual. And we often talk about that, how, you know, voicing is something that we do that's a little bit more advanced technique in piano work. And that in its simplest form, it's, you know, kind of manipulating the felt of the hammers of the piano. You use needles, you could use chemicals, and making sure that the quality of the wool in the hammer that hits the string is such that when it hits the string, it produces the best tone. And but a lot of advanced piano technicians will say, okay, but it's not just that. You know, the voicing kind of extends all the way to the tuning of the piano and the leveling of the strings, and, you know, adjusting all sorts of other factors. And it seems like the main discrepancy between what you're doing, well, besides that it's a totally different instrument, but the main discrepancy between what you're doing and what we're doing is you actually have the capacity to design the full instrument for the player. We, for the most part, have to take an instrument as it is and, you know, make it sound good for the player. And you can do a lot to tweak it, but we have the basic structure to
Sure,
start with.
sure.
Yeah.
You know, and I find that the communication is probably the most important thing, because you can always do something for somebody where the communication doesn't, you can never connect with somebody. And when you start early in the process, you can kind of weed sometimes when you know that whatever you do is not going to work out for somebody. You can kind of like, that kind of resolves itself because you don't mesh very well. I've been in a situation where you're trying to do something for somebody that, you know, they're not experienced, and they're never going to be happy. And that certainly ended up with me, and I've learned from those experiences, because like you said, everything matters, from, you know, every little detail, from, like, I'm sure you put the piano on a wood floor or a rug or in a certain room or something, you know, it changes everything. And so a lot of people get it, and then some people just want to go along for the ride. And luckily it's only happened to me, you know, one or two times, and I've learned from it. But for the most part, it's always a fun journey.
Are there common miscommunications with a guitar player? Like they say, this about the guitar, but you know they mean this. Like we have,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. And it's a problem because of the history of the guitar. For instance, like bracing, parallel bracing, which it's not, it's usually not parallel. It's where your tone bars are like this as opposed to X bracing. A lot of times people use the words like bright, for, and in my mind, and in my instruments, I hear parallel bars actually sounding more mellow, almost more like a classical guitar. Um, and I think the difference is when you're comparing it to an X brace has more stiffness and more bounce to it. So it has more low end. And I think the comparative difference is people think that one sounds bright and one sounds um, bassy. Um, and it's just it's wrong. And then there's the difference of like a lot of times people are like, I want a warm sound. I want something that sounds warm. And you have to dive a little bit deeper. Sometimes